Well, hello, everyone. Hello again. My name's Audrey Scanlan. I'm the Bishop of the Episcopal Diocese of Central Pennsylvania, and this is a new series that we are starting for Advent. We're so excited about it. We're beginning it before Advent with Thanksgiving weekend. I had it in mind to interview people from around the diocese and the different orders of ministry around the theme of hope. You know how hope is often, there's love, there's joy, there's hope, and there's peace. Some of our churches pick those four topics to think about during Advent, and I'm especially interested in hope this year. So I have asked Nichol to come and talk with us to represent the lay order of ministry. Nichol happens also to work as my executive assistant in the diocese, but she's a very active laywoman. And so, Nichol, welcome to the Friday video series.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about where you go to church and what you do there.
Sure. I've gone to St. Andrew's in Shippensburg for 25 years, and I do a lot there. I love to be involved. So I'm currently sitting on the vestry and I'm the secretary to the vestry. I'm also an 8 o'clocker, so they're always looking for help. So I'm a crucifer and a lay Eucharistic minister, lector, and greeter. And I'm also licensed as a lay Eucharistic visitor.
So of all of those jobs, do you have a favorite?
I do. I love to be the crucifer. I love to carry the cross. It is so meaningful.
That's great. Well, thank you for being with us. I've also interviewed for this week because lay ministry is so important. I've interviewed another lay person also. I interviewed Anna Gail Matson, who is representing the youth of our diocese in this series. But I'm curious, Nichol, where you find hope for the church, either where you see it now, little glimmers of it, or maybe big explosions of hope. Or what hope you have for the church in the future.
When I think of hope for the church, I always start by thinking of where the church has been and then where it is now and where it is going. And there are so many changes and so many differences, except for one, and that is we are called to be the body of Christ. And we are to go to church and to worship, but also take that out into the world and to love God and love ourselves and love our neighbors as ourselves.
Yep. Yeah. That's the whole point. So we've had some pretty rocky years with the pandemic and all that. Were you able to find any hope in the church during our time of COVID?
And I think COVID had a huge impact on the church. And I think that post-COVID, we have seen the number of people who sit in our pews diminish. But I also think that having an online presence has become so important for so many of our churches. And I was recently at an event and I met an elderly gentleman who said to me, I can't make it to church as much as I used to. I don't get around, I don't drive anymore. But I can go to church every Sunday because of the online presence that we have through Facebook live streaming. And he said, I now again feel like I'm part of that congregation. And I think the hope for the church is that we will be able to continue to reach people who can't necessarily sit in the pews every Sunday.
Is that a ministry that you were doing before COVID or that you started during the pandemic?
That is something that we started during the pandemic. And I think it's also important for busy families, people that can't necessarily get all the kids and everything together on a Sunday morning are able to sit in the living room, live stream, and be part of that service.
So you mentioned the number one question that vestries ask me when I go to visit, and that's about young people and the church. Our families have such busy lives. Our culture has shifted from when I was a child, when everything was closed on Sunday, to a really busy culture and society. So where's the hope in that for the church?
I think the church has to be willing to think outside of just Sundays. Like you said, the stores are open on Sundays, there's sporting event on Sundays. So if a church is able to offer children events on Saturday evening or weekday events for people that work on Sundays, then we're still able to reach others as a church and bring them in.
When I was the rector of two small churches, there wasn't anybody who really wanted to teach Sunday school in one of the churches, but they wanted their children to have part of it. So I started something that I called Tuesday School, and we had after school Sunday school classes, and parents came and they had their social time in the parish hall while I worked with one other volunteer to teach, to do catechesis of our young folks. What you're talking about, having a kids thing on Saturday night, having other events through the course of the week, that sounds pretty tiring for a priest. How do we support that kind of lively church activity and not burn out our clergy?
That's when you have to rely on lay people, and you reach out and say, who wants to help? Who wants to do a cookie church on a Saturday night? Who wants to lead the children in making Christmas cookies on a Wednesday evening? Because a rector cannot do everything for the church, and that is where lay people can get involved and make a difference.
Yes, exactly. And one of the things I realized when I did that Tuesday church for kids, Tuesday school, was that people were willing to partner with me, but they were a little intimidated about doing it themselves. So I think that part of the role of the clergy is to encourage and empower people in their own sense of ministry. So I'm glad you champion lay ministry. It's so important in the church.
And all you have to do is ask. If you ask someone, could you help on Saturday? Would you be willing to bake cookies with the children? It just takes being asked to say yes.
So the different ministries that you do in the church, is that because somebody invited you?
Yes. Actually, I had been going to church for about a year, and someone asked me if I would help do a children's Christmas party. And I thought, oh, I'm really not cut out for that. And she said, please just try it. I'll kind of help you and steer you in what we're looking for. And that kind of jump-started everything 24 years ago. And since then, when somebody asks, I'm always willing to give it a try. And people like to.
Yeah, the same thing is true for me. I used to sit in the back pew of our church with our three kids, and the rector came up to me one Sunday and said, this is in 1992, and he said, would you be interested in doing the schedule for the parent volunteers for the nursery care? And I thought, well, that's not that hard. But you know what? It was that little crack of the door that got me into being a part of the life of that community. And, it's a slippery slope, because here I am as a bishop now. That was my crack in the door. Tell me a little bit more about this whole culture of invitation. I think it's really important for the life and health of the church.
I read recently that most people attend church because someone invited them. And I started thinking it's so easy to invite someone to have a cup of coffee, to go to a yoga class. Why is it so hard for someone to say, do you want to come to church with me? And I think if those of us who are active in church, if we were to say to one person or one family, do you want to go to church with me on Sunday? Think of how many people we could introduce to the Episcopal Church just by asking.
Yeah. Church is pretty intimidating if you don't go. I tell a story sometimes to vestries that about, maybe 5 or 6 Thanksgivings ago, Glenn and I came home back to Pennsylvania, having been to visit my brother in Connecticut, and I had that Sunday off. And so decided I was going to go to the Lutheran church in my town. I was a nervous wreck. I looked up the time of the service like 3 times. I got there. I couldn't figure out which door to go in. I didn't want to park in the parking lot, maybe take somebody else's spot. I got into the service. I didn't know where to sit. It was so instructive for me because it helped me understand that people who aren't in the custom or pattern of going to church, how hard it can be and intimidating. So invitation, helping people understand what to expect. And I'm a professional churchgoer, right?
Right.
So invitation is key.
Greeter, though. If you walk into a church and the greeter is standing there, and they usually know everybody that attends church, were to say, "Is this your first time? Let me show you where you can sit. And here's the Book of Common Prayer, and this is how you're going to follow along." I think that would make it, but you have to get them there first. And I do think that invitation is a great idea to start.
Yeah, good. Well, I hope you keep that up. I hope you keep inviting people. If you look at the church from, like, you've been at St. Andrews for 25 years. So 25 years from now, when you can say that I've been going to this church for 50 years, what do you hope to see? What will it look like?
I hope to see it welcoming, the Episcopal Church welcoming everyone.
Mm-hmm.
The Episcopal Church welcomes people wherever they are in their life, whatever their background is, whatever they're going through. And I hope that continues. That regardless of your thoughts, your race, your background, you are welcome in the Episcopal Church. I hope that I can continue to walk up to somebody who's brand new and say, "Welcome to St. Andrews. We're so happy you're here." And then get to know them and learn more about them.
So at St. Andrews, you've done a pretty remarkable thing in the last couple of years. You've developed a program that I think your rector talks about, dissolving that boundary between who's in and who's out, right? You want to tell us a little bit about that?
So with the Grace Place feeding ministry that we have on Tuesdays, where we distribute fresh produce to anyone who is in need. They don't have to meet a certain criteria. They don't have to be on the list. They just have to show up on Tuesday. Is St. Andrew's way of welcoming the community into our church. And they made it that it's a safe place that anyone feeling like they could use food or just companionship are welcome to come on Tuesday morning. We sat in a vestry meeting yesterday where they talked about the community meals that St. Andrews does on Monday nights, where we are currently feeding 275 people on a Monday night.
Wow.
So when you think of that as church on a Monday night, of God reaching out and touching 275 people just by feeding them a meal, that is my hope for the church. And that is what St. Andrews is doing.
And you're doing it in a way that's different. And it's subtle, I think, but important, because I think this is kind of one of my hopes for the future. And that is that it's not that you are feeding people because they need food and you have it. It's not a transaction as much as it's the forming of a relationship, and that you, as the people with the food, are actually getting as much, receiving as much from that as the people physically being fed. Is that true?
I agree 100%. Yes.
Yeah.
And to be able to give and then get back, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's that dissolving of boundaries between in and out, haves and have-nots, that I think is a huge hope for the future of the church. Well, I'm excited for you and St. Andrews. I can't wait to see you in 25 years when you will have been there 50 years.
Thank you.
We can interview you again. It'll be
That
awesome.
sounds wonderful.
Well, thank you, Nicole, and thanks for taking the time to be with us today and for kicking off this series on hope. Take
Thank you,
care.
Bishop Audrey. Take care.